All right, let's get started here. I would like to remind all the commissioners, as I usually do, that when you would like to speak, don't forget to unmute your speakers and then say your name. Also, I think we're going to do the touchscreen voting thing today. Okay, that's good. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order the June 20th, 2023 Senior Citizen Commission meeting at 2:03 p.m. Have we done roll call? Is everybody signed in?
Okay, we can let the record show all commissioners are present except for Commissioners Angel and Farley.
Okay. Commissioner Tobias, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 4. Today we have one special presentation. We have with us today Carrie Joel, who is a nurse practitioner at Scripps Hospital in Encinitas, and she's going to talk to us, I think, about hospice and palliative care. Welcome.
Okay, so you got my name right, that's good. I didn't put my middle initial is Zylstra, and that's my middle name, so I try to avoid that as much as possible because people look at it and go, yeah, that's me. Anyway, so I am a nurse practitioner. I have a doctorate in nursing, and I was joking with Mr. Ling about calling me doctor, but only my students at Cal State San Marcos and a few other places that I teach call me doctor. It causes a great deal of difficulty in the hospital because I'm not a medical doctor, and actually somebody was just recently sued who claims that she was using her doctor title as inappropriately. Anyways, that's way off the point. So I work for Scripps Health. I work for the medical group that's employed by Scripps Health. So I work at Scripps Encinitas, but I'm employed by a physician medical group. I'm a consult service at the hospital. I work mostly in the intensive care unit and in the emergency room. And I can tell you what I'd like to say about your introduction is that people lump palliative care and hospice together. And that's understandable because there are a lot of cross paths. But in general, if I say to a patient family that I am from the palliative care team and they do this immediately and say, oh my God, get out of here, I'm not ready to die, then I have to sit down and say, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. I'm not here to hasten your death or to help you. But so one of the key points I want to make about palliative medicine and palliative care is that it's a consult service that moves along with the patient in a way that we're an extra layer of support. We offer things like advanced care planning. We offer pain management, and not only pain, but also all kinds of other symptoms. And what we do is, if you get consulted in the hospital, there are lots of people who think that we're there to put you on hospice right away. That's not true. If you look up palliative medicine on Dr. Google, you'll find that palliative care, most of the literature is supported by patients who are cancer patients. That's where the most of the literature is supported by palliative. And what you will find is that palliative medicine, if somebody's got a consult at the beginning of their diagnosis, they live longer, happier, better quality of lives than people who do not have the palliative care, because not necessarily at the beginning of a diagnosis we get along, but as you get more treatment and have more symptoms, we help you palliate those symptoms. So that's our biggest role, is symptom management. How can you receive palliative care? So If you are in an oncology situation, you can ask your oncologist for a palliative consult. Now, that may be difficult because sometimes they don't agree, and because they have the idea that all palliative care providers are end-of-life practitioners. So you might have to go to your primary care physician and say, I would like to have the services of palliative medicine along with my oncology services. It's getting better. I've been a nurse for 43 years, and it is getting better, but it's still, palliative is still a very new profession. So the other way is to get a palliative care consult when you're in the hospital. If you come in with and it's not only cancer. So let me back up on that, because we deal with patients who have terminal, long-term diseases, so chronic illness. I take care of patients with heart disease, with pulmonary disease. I take care of patients who have end-stage renal disease. And I think that one in particular, I have a lot of discussions about, do you know what dialysis is, and do you know what that can do to your body? And somebody who's a kidney doctor will say, well, dialysis is going to keep you alive. But if you're at 93 years old and you've lived a really good long life, and you may not want to spend 4 hours a day, 3 days a week at the clinic to have your dialysis done if you're also bed-bound or wheelchair-bound or something, so that's some of the things that we also discuss with families, and that I think that's where it comes into play that we are end-of-life service, right? In that sense, we kind of are, because if you need dialysis and you don't receive dialysis, you will die. So, who can receive, what can you, and so are there particular questions that you have about palliative medicine that I can answer before because I think I have 10 minutes, right?
You have as much time as you'd like, but commissioners, do we have any questions for? Okay.
Yes, thank you for coming, and
Welcome.
I must confess I had no idea what palliative care was, and
You're not.
now I have a glimmer. What do you think that as a senior commission and maybe through the senior center, what could we do to, I don't know, how could we interact?
So one of my rules of thumb is if you have a driver's license, you should have an advance directive. And what I mean by that is a piece of paper that lists the person who's going to make decisions for you if you're not able to make decisions for yourself. I'm almost 66 years old, and I've had many different people to be my advanced care provider because my children were too young the first time I filled out an advance directive, and I didn't want to burden them with making decisions for me at the end of life. They know very clearly what my wishes are. So I had friends, and actually 2 friends, one after the other, and both of them have died. So when my children became old enough to qualify to be my advanced, on my advanced directive, they're like, well, Mom, we don't want to do that because you clearly all your other, agents have died. But one died of cancer and one died of a brain tumor. So both, they were legitimate. What I always say about the advanced care planning part is make sure that the person who you assign knows what your wishes are. So there are, and I can provide examples of advanced directives if you'd like. There's sources on the web. Of course, the internet is a great resource for that. So that's one of the things I could say that you could encourage if there are people out there at the senior center, who don't have an advanced directive. Let's throw an advanced directive party. I did an advanced directive meeting group with my hairdresser. Okay, this is crazy, but we were talking. Hairdressers and palliative care providers and bartenders, they know a lot about people right away because we have to get to know them really, really well, really fast. And so my hairdresser and I decided, well, we have all these clients of yours who probably not a single one of them has an advanced directive. So we had 2 parties back way before COVID. They were called Wine and Wills, and I brought my stack of advanced directives, and we said it was $20 to get in there, and the rule of thumb was you could not drink more than 1 glass of wine before you filled out your advanced directive. But for me, it was a really good, not only was I helping people fill these pieces of paper out, but then I had this whole resource of other people who could be witnesses to the piece of paper, because you do not need a power of, I mean, you don't need an advocate, what are they called? Notary, thank you. That's what I run into in the hospital a lot of times, because I cannot be a witness for a patient's advance directive. I have to find, honestly, I've gone to visitors in the ICU and said, can you witness this person's signature because this document needs to be filled out now? You can get a notary, but a mobile notary costs almost $60, right? So that's an expense that we can avoid. So I would say having people be more knowledgeable about their advance directive, I would be more than happy to go talk to people. I've been doing this since I was first in nursing school. I would go to nursing homes and meet people at lunchtime and say, who has an advance directive? Back in 1981, 0 people raised their hand. Now there's a lot more. There's another document called a POST form. It's called, on the form you'll see, physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. I like to call it the provider, because I am a provider. I'm a nurse practitioner. I can sign those POST forms. You might ask, when would you need a POST? And I think that the only people who really need a POST form is if your medical provider would not be surprised that you are dead in 1 to 2 years. There's a misconception in the world, and if you've ever seen a POST, they're bright pink, you can't miss them. But in nursing homes about 10 years ago, they decided that everybody had to have a POST form. So they were filling all these pieces of paper out with just full code, full care, go to the hospital. Sorry, that's a waste of my time, right? That's the default. So I always say, POST forms are only if you really need it, if you think that that person's going to be at the end of their life sooner. So that's another document that can be filled out. What else? Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. And I think more information is needed. People, like you say, Mr. Tobias, you didn't know what palliative care was. I spoke to a gynecologist he's a DPOA for one of my patients in the hospital. He's in his 80s, and he did not know. I had to spell it out. What team are you on? So the more I can talk about this, the better. Right? I always call it an extra layer of support.
Great.
And
Thank
who
you.
wouldn't want that?
Thank you.
This is
Manager
Commissioner
Goodson.
Martin. Thank you. One thing I want to say, and I think I discussed this with you and discussed this with the city staff, is the possibility of actually going into the senior center at some point and doing a similar introduction.
A party.
A party, but at least an introduction to start with. And I believe that has been something that could be arranged. And you had said that would be good.
This is Manager Good. So in the past, we did offer classes, and one of our senior citizen commissioners taught the class for a very nominal fee, because she had to bring in the materials to supply, and she was a former nurse practitioner, so it was a good program to have. I do have a question for you, and thank you for being here to educate all of us. Can you tell me the difference between the 5 wishes and an advance directive?
Think about tissues and Kleenex. So the 5 wishes is an advance directive. 5 wishes is more delineated, so it has specific questions about what your wishes are at the end of life. Where a standard boilerplate advance directive is typically 5 or 6 pages. It lists your agent, it lists your wishes. The thing that I look most at when I've got somebody's advance directive is there's a question on page 5 that says, and you have to initial this question. The first part of it is, I do not want to prolong life. And then underneath it has some verbiage. And then, or you could initial, I would like to prolong my life. And if I have somebody coming in the hospital who's critically ill and their agent says, well, we want everything done, we want them to live at all costs, and I leaf through their advance directive, and it says they initialed back in 2019 that they did not want their life prolonged. then I start having discussions. Well, let's look at the wishes of this person that's lying in the bed. 5 wishes are good if somebody who's not, like me, I know exactly what has to be filled out on an advance directive. 5 wishes they're just questions. And if you, it's a very simple form to fill out. So it's a good document. And it's the same thing, it needs to be initialed by 2 witnesses, not notarized. So,
This is Commissioner Martin again. One thing that you said that really hit home for me was something that came up in hospice. So they run parallel in the sense that most of our patients we got just within a matter of hours or possibly a day or so. And we were always wondering, how can we get them sooner, just to start the process of talking about what do people want, and how do they want those last days, weeks, hours, and months, hopefully, and even years to spend.
and I would much rather have somebody come into the hospital with an advance directive that's not filled out properly, but at least I know that they've had time to talk to somebody about it, right? What are their wishes? Because when I speak to them in the hospital, I always say, you don't come to the hospital 100% healthy, right? You're there for a reason. And some people I always say they have 1 foot on the banana peel already, and you're then having discussions about, one of the funny things, it's not really funny, but the emergency room doctors, they don't have time to spend to sit at the bedside to talk about, what would you like if you need the breathing machine. No, they say to the patient, well, do you want to live or do you want to die? How many people here would say, no, I'd rather die today? No, right? So there's a way of handling this, and I would much rather have the discussion with people way before they get, in the emergency room or in the ICU. So talk about it, talk.
Okay. This is Commissioner Ling. Again, thank you for being here. I have a question for you. So this commission has talked about things like the POST form. We've actually sponsored a program for Vial of Life. We know about Advanced Directive. So I know Vial of Life really applies more, I think, to first responders who are coming in, and there's a document that's available for them that they can refer to that has contact information, medical history, that kind of thing. It helps them to make the right decisions at that time. Advanced Directive, I always think of that as more of a legal document. I think, when we've filled out our estate planning, wills, that kind of thing, Advanced Directive, power of attorney is always part of that documentation.
It is.
So,
I'm sorry, go
so
ahead.
I guess, are all of these documents, do they all carry the same kind of weight for these kind of decisions? Or are some documents more legally binding than others?
No, they're both very legally binding, but when I said earlier, make sure that you put that person who's going to follow your wishes on that piece of paper, whatever piece of paper it is, if it's a POST or an advance directive, because it happens all the time where, the wishes are very clearly marked on a POST form or on an advance directive, and the agent, the person who's been assigned, will come and say, no, they were crazy when they signed that. I know that they would not want to die today or tomorrow or whatever. So they're both very legally binding, but with the caveat that people have the right to make, a different decision.
So whoever that agent is that you've assigned can always,
They can change their mind. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We haven't perfected this system very well, but like I always say, make sure the person knows what you really want to avoid just that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I think we're good, thank you.
Okay.
Manager Goodsell, did you have another question, or are you good? Okay,
Okay.
thank
Good.
you.
I've been gone from the hospital for 3 hours, so my phone is blowing up, so I'm going to go back to work. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 5, oral communications. Do we have Any oral communication speakers today?
We have none.
Okay. Agenda item 6, changes to the agenda. Do we have any changes to today's agenda?
There are no changes.
All right. Agenda item 7, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the May 16th, 2023 meeting minutes?
This is Commissioner Martin. I move to approve the May 16th minutes.
Okay, Commissioner Martin makes the motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Hanwood. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Commissioner Hanwit seconds the motion. Let's vote.
I'll come into it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, let the record show it passes unanimously with Commissioners Angel and Farley being absent.
Thank you. Moving on. Agenda item 8, action items. 8A, Senior Citizen Commission Annual Work Plan. And let's take a look at the work plan and get some updates, if any, on these work plan items. So starting with work plan item 1. Any updates?
This is Commissioner Martin. I believe several of us attended the awards on May 24th, and thank you to the city for all the work that you did to put those two together. Looks like you made a lot of people's day.
Anyone else?
On a basis of a or maybe it's a city-sponsored, I don't know what the Cruise 101 classified as. I attended this last one. One thing I noticed, by the way, Commissioner Martin, that was different from prior years, being that I have somebody that's into old cars. It used to be that 101 was a little bit more restrictive for the vintage cars down, but it looks like they're using the arteries of 101 to allow people to park more in those arteries. So it's people that are non-vintage cars mostly on 101, which I was a little surprised at, and I had heard several people say, wow, it's an old car night, but they don't even let old cars park here. So just wondered if you knew anything, city about that. Okay. But it was incredibly well attended, incredibly well.
Excuse me, what do you mean, Peter Tobias, what do you mean by parking in the arteries?
Meaning the cross streets.
Oh,
So
okay.
they pushed,
So were they
they
closed?
allowed probably 3 across to just come right up to 101, and then cars behind them. So there were just,
So they were they were
sometimes-
closed off, basically, too.
they were somewhat closed off, but I didn't actually see them fully closed off. It looked like people could go into those areas, and maybe that's what people did. Once they
I mean,
saw
with
that
cars.
there wasn't any parking, they went around and just went in on the sides.
I suppose all the eating in the parking spaces cuts down significantly the ability to park old cars as well as any other car.
I did see a little bit about that, but there wasn't as much of that. So, yeah, a little.
This is Manager Goodsell. So that program was put on by the Encinitas 101 Main Street Association, it looks like.
Okay,
And then the awards program that you had referred to, I went ahead and documented who attended that in work plan item number 4 for the partnership with the Rotary for the Senior Awards.
Okay, moving on to work plan item 2, identify guest speakers for monthly meetings to provide education regarding topics related to adults 50 plus. Any updates?
Commissioner Martin, I just want to say thank you to the city for arranging Carrie, and it keeps coming in my head, this is Commissioner Martin, that the tie together of 3 concepts that have come up in my life, hospice, palliative care, but then there's another one, which I think some of you are familiar with, but it was called, and it still is around, although COVID did a number on it, death cafes. And I really think that could be a topic that could, if not come in here, come into the community center.
We've had some Death Cafe events in the
Great.
past couple of years. I don't know if it's a regular thing at this point.
This is Manager Goodsell. So we did have a Death Cafe offered annually, and that was put on by a former senior citizen commissioner. And we hosted that at the Encinitas Library a few times, and then we also attempted to host it at the Encinitas Community and Senior Center. Fortunately, we did not get enough participants to attend to hold the session, but we can always try again at a later date. And then while we're on this topic, just to let you know, we are dark in July, so there won't be a presentation in July. For the month of August, I've scheduled a speaker from Mental Health America, and they're a partner of Live Well San Diego. And then in September, I scheduled a speaker from Choose Well San Diego, and it's a County of San Diego program that helps people make informed decisions when selecting assisted living homes. And if you have any other recommendations or suggestions, I'm happy to go ahead and make contact with the presenter and add them.
Okay. Moving on to work plan item 3, engage as organizers and volunteers with local community service organizations and the community and senior center. Any updates? No? So I'm still doing my usual thing. That hasn't changed. All right, work plan item 4, continue partnership with the Encinitas Rotary Club and explore other Encinitas Service Club partnerships to recognize or promote the Senior Citizen of the Year and Lifetime Achievement Awards. So as Manager Goodsell was saying, the Rotary Club luncheon was held and a number of us attended. I got to practice my public speaking skills. But that was a nice event.
And this is Commissioner Martin, the thank you notes did go out to people that had suggested. That brought up something to mind, and I didn't know what the protocol was. For example, our speaker today, do we send a thank you note to our presenters?
This is Manager Goodsell. I always follow up with a thank you email to the speaker.
This is Commissioner Martin. One question about the Rotary Club. At some point earlier this year, we had talked about the idea that it may not be an annual event for the Senior of the Year or Lifetime Achievement. Was it decided that this next one will be an annual?
So this is Commissioner Ling. I think that's really between the ad hoc group and the Rotary Club. There's 2 points, right? One is should this be an annual event? And the other part of this was, should we be promoting these awards throughout the year rather than just about the time that the nominations go out? Because, really, you don't want them to be thinking about who deserves this award 2 weeks out of the year, right? It should be something we should be thinking about all the time.
Exactly.
If it makes it easier to find, I think we've been very fortunate. We've found some very, very good, very deserving award winners and nominees in general. So that hasn't been too much of a challenge. But if it means that we will have an easier time getting more nominees for each event, that's kind of the discussion I think you want to have with the Rotary Club. And the other thing, too, is the goal in this particular work plan is also, do we want to seek out other service organizations to help out with this? So I think if you're in that ad hoc committee, that's really completely under your authority.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to work plan item 5. Create new and sustaining ongoing intergenerational programming in collaboration with the Encinitas Youth Commissions and other service organizations. We did have this is Commissioner Ling again, we did have our cross-generational game event on May 20th. Attendance could have been better. I think we know how to do this event in the future, and I think we have some ideas about how we might be able to improve promotion and marketing for this. The other thing was that for the last meeting of the Youth Commission for this term, I attended. I was a guest speaker, and I spoke a few words for a few minutes, and I basically wanted to compliment this year's Youth Commission on really taking an active engagement in the things that they did, especially the collaboration with the Senior Citizen Commission, and I tried to encourage that they would do the same thing for next term.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Peter Tobias, just a question. When does the Youth Commission meet?
They're kind of bracketed by the school year. So they will start meeting, I think, in August, and their last meeting is in June.
This is Commissioner Hamer. They will begin meeting in September.
Okay.
And as you stated, it'll go through June. And the good news is some of them are carryover, so they'll have some commissioners who served, so they'll carry over the spirit of the programs. But there's also lots of new and enthusiastic commissioners, so it should be great collaboration moving forward.
And it's 4:30 in the afternoons on Wednesday? So
Yes, it's the first Wednesday of the month, 3:30,
So-
4:30.
got to be after school.
So at this point, they're off till September.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that being said, it means that as far as our collaborations with the Youth Commission, we're going to be very quiet for the next couple of months. So I do know that there are interests in other intergenerational programs, not necessarily associated with Youth Commission, so this is a good time for us to dig into those. Okay, any other updates? Moving on to work plan item 6. Create new and sustain ongoing programs for adults 50+, including computer assistance, Feeling Fit Club, and class offerings at the Encinitas Community and Senior Center, Encinitas Parks, and/or San Diego County Libraries in Encinitas. Any updates on that?
It's Commissioner Koblenz. I know we're working on a survey, but I've been doing a little personal survey, and the only update I have is not the only update seems to be not only a need, but definitely a necessity to have more communication and collaboration within our senior community. So I think we're all aware of that, and it just substantiates what we know is that the desire now to come back together and have things that we can deal with is going to be, will reveal itself through our survey. So that was just an observation.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Hanwitt. I was just wondering if you knew when does the survey response time end and when you'll know what the results are?
So we set a deadline for the survey results, end of June. If we felt, if the commission felt that we did not have enough responses at that time, we can always extend it. But when we get to that work plan item, we can talk about where we are so far. Okay, work plan, oh, go ahead, Commissioner
Well,
Stiles.
this is Peter Tobias.
As a result of this presentation, it seems to me like we need a course of planning for old age. We can talk about that as part of our head off the roof, but I would say that if we don't have
I agree. So things like the Death Cafe, but also discussions, or, the Wine and Will that Carrie was mentioning, those kind of programs, it seems like we need to somehow reactivate, revive those things. If these were commonplace before COVID, they need to be happening again now. And a lot of it, I think, it's going to be gauged by attendance. So it comes back to, we need to find better mechanisms to spread the word around that these programs exist.
Commissioner Koblenz, one more time. I know we've talked about this, and I haven't found a direct source yet, but I really think, along with Commissioner Tobias, that hearing is a vital part to not only communication, mental health, and Alzheimer's and dementia. So I think that might be another really important aspect that we'd find. It's part of our 5 senses, so if we could maybe put that on the list, and then I'll see if I can locate, help a little bit with some people like Commissioner Martin did with Carrie.
So thinking we're talking about lining up a guest speaker to talk about hearing.
Absolutely, and then, again, I believe that our survey will give us more of a direction. Maybe then, too, have classes or have an opportunity where people can just get more informed so that they can then take the next step.
Yeah, and that's in a more interactive way. I think we've done a number of events as part of the senior nutrition program where we've had speakers come in. We've had, it used to be that the blood pressure measurements were done actually within the banquet hall during senior lunch. So I'm wondering if we can do some sort of a hearing event, hearing tests, something like that. Would it be appropriate, I think, for senior nutrition?
That would be a possibility as long as it's from the County of San Diego.
Right.
Or a nonprofit service provider. So I don't know if that exists, but we can look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Koblenz, Commissioner Goodsell, have we explored, I say we, I mean you, explored the possibility of what options True Care provides? I know they do dental, and I know they do medical. I'm wondering if they might not actually do audiologist also.
Is True Care a county program? I'm not familiar with True Care.
Commissioner, yes, they're on 2nd Street. And
Okay.
they've
If you want to
been-
send me some information on that, that would be great, and I can look into it.
Yeah, maybe we can even do the dental and the medical as a screening. Yeah, I'll send that to you with the
Thank you.
contact person.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 7, or work plan item 7, leverage participation in Age Well San Diego 2.0 conversations to create recommendations and programs that can directly affect the adult 50-plus community in Encinitas. Any updates? No. Work plan item 8, explore grant funding opportunities based on community needs and survey results.
Well, this is Commissioner Hanwett. I can give you a little bit of an update. We submitted the request for funding for the shade sales to the San Diego Senior Foundation and got a response back that right now, they're focusing on requests from nonprofits rather than municipalities. And so we're going to resubmit that in the fall, and hopefully they'll take a look at it. And the other thing that's kind of brewing is that staff reached out to me to talk about the dance program that's here on Wednesdays with the help of the Rotary Club to see whether we can get some information together about funding for that so that can be maintained.
Agenda item 9, work plan item 9, develop and conduct a survey for adults 50 plus to gain insight into programs and services for this demographic. As everybody knows, we approved the survey last meeting. It rolled out a couple of days later. And managers, do we have updates on how many responses we've had so far?
This is Manager Good. So I'll give a full report in August because we're dark in July. But I can give you a little bit of information from the data that has been collected so far. We did receive 230 responses already. So that's a pretty good number. The majority of our customers, we found out, do drive to the center. And the question about would you be interested in getting involved with new programs, over 60% said yes as a participant. As far as the majority of the people that responded to the survey with their age, they were between the ages of 66 and 75. And that's pretty much all I have to report at this time, but we'll have a lot more data and information for you in August.
Commissioner Copeland, based on, thank you, Commissioner Goodsell, and the support from the city is wonderful on this. Based on just that, then I don't know if this is the appropriate time to extend the deadline for that survey and go another month?
This is Manager Good. So what is your target goal of responses that you're looking for? We are getting these surveys out to our instructors as well to spread to their program participants. So I think we're going to get quite a few more that way. But did you have a target goal in mind?
Yes, Commissioner Copeland, my target goal is 500.
Okay, so I think maybe the direction we'll provide is if we are not close to our goal of 500 at the end of June, then we set up an extension to another month, and then we can report progress in August. Is that okay?
Sure.
This is Commissioner Copeland. My thought also is, based on what I know and what I hear out on the streets, oh, that doesn't sound well, anyway, the summer programs are quite active right now, and I'm thinking that will provide additional information as the summer rolls through, that we might have a lot more people crossing that threshold. So that's part of my thought process.
Commissioner Martin, I agree. I think maybe even some of the music events, just I could bring a packet, or I was also thinking something easier and just letting people scan the code. Is that something that I could do?
I mean, you can actually take the first page of the flyer and just let them scan it.
This is Commissioner Copeland. Also, I was able, with the support of Commissioner Goodsell, to get the Encinitas Chamber. Will put a link in their newsletter for the next couple weeks. So I think that will be, and then I'll go ahead and do exactly that. I'll take the thing tonight for the mixer and let them scan the code. So I've been visiting some of the instructors too just before class starts. So.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to work plan item 10. Research best practices as it relates to adult 50-plus issues and send letters of support as needed to City Council and commissions. Any updates?
Well, this is Commissioner Hanwett. This is not really an update. It's just some information that I wanted to share with everybody because we had many times talked about how we were concerned about the permit process for seniors to be able to go through, and we had the guest speaker from Development Services or whatever it's called in the city. And I was going to get with the other, I actually started a letter, and I was going to get with the other ad hoc folks. And then I decided to buy an electric car, and that required getting a city permit. So I thought, okay, you know, this will be a great test because I'm a senior and I'm going through the process. Now, the only thing I must say is that I'm pretty comfortable with using a computer. So if you have a level of comfort, you can kind of maneuver your way through it. But it is 100% self-service. And when I first started, one thing that I couldn't find, I could get on, but I couldn't find out what the permit was going to cost. And so I went over here, and I talked to somebody at the front desk, and the whole front of what used to be where you would sit is just computers. So when they said that they would help, if you needed help filling out the form, they meant it. There's plenty of computers for anybody that would want that help. And the person behind the desk was extremely helpful to me. And by the way, it doesn't cost anything. You get a permit, but you don't have to pay for it if you're getting an EV charger or solar. It's a gift from the city for going forward with that. And so what I found was that if you were going to try to do it on your own, and I did it without the help of my electrician, although there was information that I needed from him, you could easily call in and ask a question. And one time that I called, I got voicemail, and I thought, oh, great, I'm in a hurry, and I'm not going to hear back forever. And somebody called me back within an hour and explained things very clearly, and I thought that was great. That's a great response time. And then the other thing was that once it was submitted, it only took a day to get a response. So I thought, that was pretty exceptional. And they also sent a survey. Oh, well, so after it was submitted, then you had to make an appointment for it to get inspected. And that was very transparent. You could do that with a calendar. They said, right on there, it said to call in between 8 and 8:30. They would let you know the window of time the person would be there. He came, and in that window of time, and it all passed very quickly. So my only concern was that, and they did send a survey, a little survey that gave you the opportunity to comment. And the only thing I found kind of daunting was that sometimes there were too many choices. And if you don't know anything about plumbing or electricity or anything like that, that was a little bit difficult. Or if you were a senior and you thought, all right, I'm just going to go in there and let them help me, when you get to a certain page, you have to upload documents like a plan of what a drawing of what you're going to do. And they wanted proof of ownership if you were the owner of the house. And I was a little confused about that because when I saw that, I thought, oh no, they want the deed or something like that. I don't know where that is. It's going to take me forever to find it. But that was another phone call I made, and I said, is it okay just to copy your tax bill? And she said, oh yes, plenty of people do that. So that kind of delineation would make it easier, or if you were going in and planning to have them help you while you were sitting there, it'd be really nice to know ahead of time what you needed to have with you so you didn't have to save it, go home, get your stuff, come back. But the process was really okay. And I have to admit I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a lot more complicated. So kudos to them.
This is Commissioner Tobias. For what part of buying an electric car did you need a permit?
I live in an HOA, that part. They require that you have a licensed electrician, and then you get a permit from the city. And actually, I looked it up in a million places because a lot of people said, electricians said, I've never needed to get a permit to put in a 220. It's a 220
This is for the EVSE, for charging the car.
for charging the car. You have to have something in the garage. And the city does require that if you're doing any kind of changes and,
So let me just follow up.
Yeah.
I have a 220 or 240 or whatever it is in my garage already. Am I still need some other permit?
Well, I did read, I only had 110 in my garage, and I did read that you shouldn't have, like if you, where I live, a lot of people have a clothes dryer in the garage, and they have a 220 outlet, but they said it has to be dedicated.
Yep.
So it should be dedicated.
Yep. And the minimum rating, I believe, is 220, 50 amps.
Yeah, they don't want it to melt. So,
50?
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know that we need a letter, is what I guess that's
Well,
my conclusion. I don't know.
I was going to comment, I still think it may be worthwhile to have a letter for simplifying the permitting process for aging in place, for the kind of home modifications. Very
Yeah.
similar to what they did with the ADUs, the auxiliary dwellings.
Yeah, simplifying the whole process. Yeah, well, and when I thought about writing a letter, I thought it would be nice to put in a lot of these positives, because a lot of what the person that came and spoke to us said was true.
And I also think there's a little bit of intimidation when people who are not computer literate, the expectation is they're going to have to fight tooth and nail to get something done. So they already go in with an attitude that this is not going to work. And they don't want to make that first phone call to find out, oh, is this all I need to do? They don't want to, once they walk in, they don't want to wait for the person who's going to help them at the computer terminal to pick the right documents to fill out. So I think there's a certain level of discomfort that somehow we need to, it's like, I don't know, going to the DMV. Right? You already start off with a bad attitude about going.
Right.
So,
Yeah, well, I don't know how we would fight that, except, it'd be a word of mouth if people don't have a bad experience. But I think the people at the desk, the couple of people that I spoke with, were very patient. And I had a question that she didn't know the answer to, and she said I had to talk to the inspector. And she wrote down on a sticky note his name and phone number, and she said, now call him between 8 and 8:30 and he'll answer the phone. And he did. He did. It's like, we shouldn't be surprised about these things, but, and I, know nothing about electricity. I know nothing about amps and watts and stuff like that. So it was intimidating to me, too.
Yeah.
You don't know if you'll be able to answer the questions that are asked. But they were very helpful. So.
Commissioner Koblenz, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought when we had that wonderful man from the permitting office, that was our request, that we had someone that could walk somebody through it on a one-to-one basis.
yes. And I think at the time, he did say they were trying to get programs like that in place. So it sounds like,
We just need a reminder letter.
Well, I
well, I
know-
think they've done it, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, I was only in the office one time, but when I went in there, and it was random, I mean, I just picked a day and I happened to go in there in the middle of the morning, there was nobody there. There was no line. You have to sign in when you get there, and then somebody will come out and help you. But there was nobody on any of the computers, and there was nobody in front of me. So for sure, somebody would have had, and maybe that would be, people would have to know, well, what's the best time?
yeah, that may in itself be an education process, letting especially the seniors who are not computer literate know that they can just come in, and someone will show them on the computer terminal how to fill out the appropriate forms. That sounds like a marketing thing.
This is Commissioner Martin, I think we brought up to the city employees something about, is there a possibility of having a dedicated senior time period for some of these permits and processes? And is it possible to have one of your city staff come into the senior center and present about some of these services? And he said yes.
Having a dedicated time is nice, but I think you'd really have to advertise that, because if they put aside a time and then nobody shows up, they're not going to be happy about
But
that.
I'm thinking even if it was a one-time thing, like an open house,
Yeah?
some way to promote that these services are friendly to adults 50 plus.
The Commissioner Tobias, I'm sure that, so we have about 65,000 people in Encinitas. I'm sure that most of them have little idea of how the city operates. I wonder if not just for seniors, I mean, but, all right, we're the senior commission, but for seniors, just the functions of city government. I mean, suppose you have a plumbing problem. I don't know. Is this what we're talking about under best practices? I mean, best practices to me is a very vague term. I'm not really sure what it means.
It's deliberately vague in this case, I think. But is it worth having him come back and tell us what progress has been made and giving it, letting him be a sounding board for some of the things we've just been talking about?
I can definitely put in the request to invite him to come back and speak and have some dialogue.
Okay, unless there's another mechanism for this, because
Unless you'd like to put in writing, your letter of request and talk about your experience and the positives and then what you're still looking for from the department.
okay.
Commissioner Koblenz, it seems, and I don't know if we're allowed to, when we talk about a dialogue, that would be exactly it. It would be we and the many people we will get in our audience would actually ask questions, specific questions, that instead of just from A to B. But I don't know, is that allowed?
So I was
Not
going
under
to,
presentation, not as a presentation.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Commissioner Ling, I was going to make a suggestion. Just as you and Commissioner Martin did your little field trips to the various senior centers, maybe this ad hoc group could do a field trip to the permits folks and just have them walk through what things are in place and increase your awareness. And then at that time, you can also provide feedback on how we can make the rest of the adult 50-plus community more aware of this. That'd be my suggestion.
Suggestion taken, thank you.
I did, this Commissioner Martin, I don't know who just recently in this time here said something about an open house, but I was thinking, well, a senior open house where we actually offered food, and they like their food, and you could have almost like the health fair, which is very well attended, but in this case, it's a city fair. Like, the key things, I don't know, just a thought.
Commissioner Koblenz, Commissioner Martin, that's a great idea. And it appears it might be maybe beyond the scope just right now, but I think that's another suggestion we would like to address.
Okay. I think that wraps up the work plan.
Could I, with the chair's permission, Commissioner Tobias, I'd like to go back to the issue about suggestions for presentations. It seems to me that many seniors are land rich and cash poor, and the new housing opportunities, if you call them opportunities, about building housing, ADUs, and so on and so forth. I know at least one senior who would like to know more about what's going on in the city in terms of what kind of, not what's being built, but the laws about what you can build on your property have changed a lot in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think for some people who are land rich and cash poor, they probably have some misconceptions about what they can do with their property. And that might be a useful presentation for us to hear as a way of thinking about how we might educate people in the future.
Commissioner Hanwett, when the city changed the requirements for the ADU several years ago, my son wanted to build an ADU behind his house and sent me off to a city council meeting, and they have a wonderful presentation where they explain all the requirements and the work with the architect and the plans that you can just take from them. So maybe they would do that again. That was a while ago.
Commissioner Koblenz, thank you, Commissioner Tobias, for reminding me, and Commissioner Hanwick. This seems to me as though it would be a perfect invitation to invite people to attend city council meetings We have one tomorrow night, I believe, which will talk about affordable housing and such. So can we write a letter with regard to that? I know we've spoken how we as seniors, affordable housing, we know affordable housing and seniors make up a large portion. I'm thinking that's a really important thing that we can support our city with.
So for point of order, this is Manager Goodsell. Which goal item are we referring to on the work plan?
I think we're doing
Still on
number
10.
10.
We're back to 10? Okay.
And I think it works well with
Thank
what we're all talking about, is both June 21st and June 28th. We're talking about some pretty important things, and as seniors, we're sitting in a situation where we need to be involved in that, so that would be a suggestion I might make.
So this is something that the ad hoc group can do, draft a letter to city council. That's what I think I'm hearing. Okay. All right, moving on. We're at agenda item 9, informational items. Manager Goodsell, you have an update for us?
I sure do. Okay, statistics. 538 meals were provided at the senior nutrition program in May, and 198 one-way rides were given. The special nutrition events held this month included the birthday Sundays on June 2nd, the safari-themed party on June 7th, and bingo was held today. July-themed nutrition days include the red, white, and blue theme party on July 3rd, birthday Sundays on July 7th, and bingo on July 18th. There were a total of 886 non-nutrition participants registered for programs. This includes the fee-based classes such as arts and crafts, dance, fitness, games, and free senior programs. And we have an event coming up called I Love a Clean San Diego, and that's in partnership with the City of Encinitas for the 8th Annual Zero Waste Fair. That is going to be held on June 24th. It's a Saturday from 10 to 1, and it will be held at EUSD Farm Lab on Quail Gardens Drive. And as a reminder, we won't have a senior commission meeting in July, but the ad hocs are still welcome to get together and work as a team if they choose to do so. And that concludes my report.
And I can speak from personal experience. It's definitely getting a lot busier, both at senior lunch and in the computer lab. So that's good news.
For department reports, the Cultural Arts Division hosted Art Night on June 3rd and had about approximately 1,000 participants, and that was hosted at the Community and Senior Center, Library, and City Hall. We had the Encinitas VIP volunteers assist with that, with the shuttles and for other event operations. Their Music by the Sea was on Friday, June 16th at the Encinitas Library and was a huge success and sold out. And upcoming in July, the Moonlight Summer Beach Concerts will be hosted. They are this year featuring a opening band, which will be like a youth teen band, and that will start at 1 o'clock, and then the headliners will begin at 3. The dates for that are July 3rd and 23rd, August 6th and 20th. We will have a city booth, so if you would like to join us at those events and maybe have the opportunity to do the surveys to get to that 500, that might be a good opportunity. As well as in July, we will be working with Cardiff 101 on the summer Dog Days of Summer. That's at the Encinitas Community Park. And that is, again, Sunday, July 16th. That will be 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. I will send all the information out to you, but that will be another one. Another great spot. We'll have a city booth, so you could have the surveys, either scanned or paper versions, to continue outreach to the community. So throughout the month of July, another big milestone for us is July is National Parks and Recreation Month. So all throughout the month, we'll be working with City Hall to post social media information and educate the public on the impact that Parks and Recreation has on the community. We will also be presenting a Parks and Recreation Month proclamation at the City Council meeting on June 28th. If you'd like to join us, you're welcome to come up as they speak that. We'll also have a video highlighting all the different services our department offers. And we are looking forward to a healthy and fun and safe summer in Encinitas. So thank you for your part in all of that, and look forward to seeing you at the events.
Thank you, Manager Hamer. We're at agenda item 10, commission member initiated agenda items. Do we have any commission member initiated agenda items today? No. Agenda item 11, future agenda items added by commission members. So this is the time if you want to add something to our next meeting, which will be August. This is the time to do it. No? All right, that brings us to agenda item 12, the roundtable reports, and I will start with Commissioner Tobias at the end and work our way back here.
Commissioner Tobias, having been out of town for the better part of the last 6 weeks, I have nothing to report. My summer vacation.
Commissioner Martin, I think said.
Commissioner Koblenz, I think I've added everything that I needed to add, except I seem to be missing something, but it's not important. So, yes, I do. I really do want to thank Parks and Recs and everybody that's really coming together in a wonderful way to supporting the senior center. Christy Manager Goodsell reported to me that we have something covering the exit as you leave the senior center instead of just the industrial roll-up, and that's just evidence of how well we're working together. So that's all.
Well, there was no Age Well meeting this month, so I went ahead and attended an Aging and Independent Services Advisory Council. I was just kind of interested and curious about it, and you can attend as a guest. They meet in person, but you can attend as a guest using Zoom. And they had a very powerful speaker, Dr. Lindsay Yorman, and she talked about age-friendly care and doctors' lack of training to deal with people that are older, and the importance of that training, so that you can go to the doctor and feel that you're being understood and listened to and respected. So it was very interesting.
Okay, I have no updates. So with that, the June 20th, 2023 Senior Citizen Commission meeting is hereby adjourned at 3:10 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I wonder what happened to Mona?